than anything, 1 o'clock games for the most part, not a lot of weird Thursday, and certainly for this year, no Wembley, right?
Well, no Wembley and no home primetime games, short of a flex scheduling change later in the season. No Monday night games either, which you actually have to go back to 2003, the last time the Ravens will have not appeared on Monday Night Football. I guess they do play in Indianapolis in the preseason, but that doesn't count.
Right.
so
fake football.
Definitely, from a primetime schedule standpoint, it's not the best. I mean, you're playing at Cincinnati week 2, Thursday Night Football, so that's a pretty quick turnaround from the opener against Buffalo, and then you're playing at Pittsburgh Sunday Night Football. Imagine that, but September 30th. So, it's definitely a strange schedule from that standpoint. And I think the biggest thing that really jumps out at you, besides just looking at the primetime games or lack thereof, is 4 of 6 on the road and 3 straight road games. That they've got some tests here early on in the season. So you hope, first of all, that they don't have a litany of injuries like they did last year during the preseason and even before training camp. And 2, you hope this team's ready to be firing on all cylinders early on because, okay, home against Buffalo, that shouldn't be, that's not anything that sticks out as incredibly difficult. But beyond that, at Cincinnati, we know how the Ravens have played there over the years for the most part, at Pittsburgh, at Cleveland, at Tennessee. I mean, that's,
4 out of 6 on the road to start the campaign is really, but this thing's lopsided to help them at the end, right? Literally.
Yeah, and that's how you have to look at it. I mean, I'm sure John Harbaugh looks at the schedule and says, well, 4 of the first 6 on the road, I'd rather not have that. But then you look after the bye week, I mean, my goodness, they have a stretch where, in November, they do not leave the state of Maryland other than players scattering for the bye week. They play home against Pittsburgh, home against Cincinnati, home against Oakland, and then they don't go back on the road until early December. So you always look at you always are dwelling on the negative if you're a fan, if you're even the organization. You're looking at those spots in the schedule where you don't like it, but there are.
Well, you don't like road Kansas City, road Atlanta, road San Diego, right? Or wherever the hell they are at this point. Carson. I Googled that the other night. But, yeah, I mean, those road games in December are kind of treacherous, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely. I mean, who knows with Kansas City, with Patrick Mahomes now being their quarterback. I mean, it's kind of tough to really figure out what they're going to look like.
Dude, who knows with any of these teams?
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, think about it. I think 2017 was such a perfect example of this that, you looked at Green Bay, and you're thinking, wow, that's definitely going to be a loss. And then Aaron Rodgers wasn't on the field, and that ended up being one of their easier games, at least as far as their road schedule went. So it really is one of those things where I kind of laugh when people try to predict the win-loss record.
WLL, WWWL, yeah, exactly.
But we haven't even got to the draft. We don't know what the injury picture is even going to be like at the end of the preseason. I mean, so many things can change, but I think it's very clear this team, the pressure is going to be on for them to get off to a good start. And when you're playing 4 out of 6 on the road, it's not exactly easy to do that. And we've seen this time and time again over these last 4 to 5 years where the Ravens clearly haven't made the playoffs and have really had their issues. They've generally have not started very well, and it's great to play better in the second half of the season, but you just leave yourself such a small margin for error. So I think the challenge is going to be very clear, and even though not all those road games are against impossible opponents, we know how difficult it is to play in this league away from your home stadium.
Well, yeah, and I remember a couple years ago they opened out in Denver and then the San Francisco or Oakland after that. I mean, living out in San Jose, having those, that's not this schedule, and this schedule isn't London, and this schedule isn't weird Monday night. Now, the Cincinnati game, that's going to be a little bit of an adjustment, but you get a little mini bye on the back end of that to get ready for the Broncos and these road trips, which, look, I do these road trips too, right? And you've gotten used to over the last couple of years at least jumping on a plane and going to Cleveland or Pittsburgh or here or there. Sometimes we're doing bus trips like we're going to be doing to Charlotte, and we have a road trip we're going to be doing to Nashville. That's a flight. But, these are pretty easy pedestrian flights. Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, all the road games out of the way early. You like to think you're going to be your healthiest. That would not have played well last year for them, given where Joe Flacco was early in the season. But, these are quick trips. This isn't a brutal, taxing schedule from a demanding schedule standpoint where you're going to Mexico City or you have weird stuff. It's a bunch of 1 o'clock games. I find that to be palatable because all the teams are going to be formidable. It's a National Football League. All these teams think that they can win 10 games. So, I look down and I can make a positive case for any one of these teams. Well, maybe except for the Browns. But the Browns are going to win the draft next week. So once they win the draft, then But, for me, the schedule is all about where's the bye, what time are we playing? Do we have these weird 11 in the morning games? How many Thursday nights? Where we got to go when we're on Thursday night? Getting that thing out of the way. That feels a lot better to do that in September, I'm sure, than doing it in November, man.
Yeah, and you mentioned the bye. The Ravens, for all the hand-wringing over the years about not having a Monday night home game, which I do find it ironic that they finally got one, and then they're not on Monday Night Football at all, which anyone who watched that Ravens-Texans game last year, maybe you understand it a little bit more. But, for all the hand-wringing about things like that, they've been pretty fortunate as far as their bye. I think most of the time, you'd like to have your bye somewhere between Week 7 and Week 10. If it's any later than that, you're playing a long time from really the start of training camp until you get to Week 12 or whatever it ends up being. The latest bye you could potentially have in a given year. And if it's early, then you're looking at having to play 10, 11, 12 weeks in a row, and you could be running on fumes. You always want it to fall when you might be banged up, and I kind of think back to where the Ravens were 2 years ago. When they had their bye after those back-to-back games against the Giants and Jets, and we knew they were so banged up. So you can't really control that part of it, but this will be, I think, their their seventh straight year of having a bye no earlier than Week 8. So I think that works out. Again, as you pointed out, short of having 3 West Coast games or a London game or going to Mexico City or anything like that, you look at the schedule from a travel standpoint, it's not outrageous. Even the Thursday night road game, I think you'd rather have that probably in Week 2 than you would later in the season, I would think. It's never ideal, but we understand that, and Cincinnati's not an especially long trip. And, they have one West Coast trip. They go to Los Angeles to play the Chargers Saturday or Sunday, December 22nd or 23rd.
Yeah, man. I try to explain that to my wife, and I'm like, so the L.A. game is like Christmas week, and you've got like a family, and I don't think that's going to be real popular,
Well, it just comes down to this. Look, flex scheduling has been a part of the NFL for a really long time, and we saw what happened last year with the New Year's Eve game time being changed, and people were up in arms about that. But, I empathize for people. Hey, you see the Chargers in Los Angeles, that's a pretty appealing trip, but, is it a difference of the trip you leave Friday and then stay through Monday, or you leave Thursday and stay through Sunday? It's really difficult to plan, and
it's goofy.
It's a couple days before Christmas, so that's a bummer from that standpoint. But just strictly for the Ravens' purposes, when you're only talking about one West Coast trip, beyond that, what their longest flight would be to
Kansas City.
Yeah. Which that's not an outrageously long flight.
This is a comfy schedule from that standpoint, from a travel standpoint, from when they play, where they play. Look, you got to go play all these AFC North teams. I'd rather play them early in the year. I really would. I know you'd say, well, maybe Roethlisberger wouldn't be there in Week 13 or whatever. But, get it out of the way, go play these games and get them done, and then you get them coming to your place the rest of the year.
Yeah, the one thing I really don't like, I don't like the Ravens and Steelers concluding the season series 3 weeks before Thanksgiving. That just feels wrong.
Fair enough.
Whether it's a home or an away game, there should be a game in December played between the Ravens and the Steelers.
You don't like that legendary Ravens-Buccaneers matchup?
Yeah, right. Well, we'll get to see Ryan Jensen come back to Baltimore, in mid-December after playing in the Tampa Heat all season. So, but yeah, that was the one thing that bothered me. But it definitely is strange when you think that the Ravens are playing all three of their AFC North road games so early in the season. I mean, it's the earliest they will have concluded the road portion of their division schedule in franchise history. I mean, you wrap up your three divisional road games by week 5. I mean, that's definitely strange. Is that a big advantage? I don't know. It all depends. I mean, like you said, maybe Ben Roethlisberger's not available later in the season. Maybe he's hurt early in the season, and maybe you like that. I don't know. But it's definitely, there's some quirks here. But again, beyond just looking at the fact that they're playing 8 games against playoff teams from a year ago, which what that ends up equating to this year, who the heck knows? It's the NFL. They're playing 7 games against opponents who were below 500 last year. So just kind of you wait and see how it plays out, and in the meantime, you focus on the draft. You try to get your roster as fine-tuned as you can between now and the start of the season, and then you're kind of at the mercy of the football gods, I guess, as far as your health and the health of the opponent. As we saw post-bye last year, the Ravens certainly couldn't have complained too much about the number of backup quarterbacks and injured quarterbacks that didn't play against them, and even rookie quarterbacks for that matter.
He is Luke Jones. He is Baltimore Luke at on Twitter and Luke at WNST.net. It's all brought to you by Howard Bank, a relentless commitment to being the best at everything they do. Every person at Howard Bank empowered to help you. Go see them at howardbank.com. Also, Royal Farms, real fresh, real fast, and make sure you're downloading that app. When you're using the app, you pump the gas, you get the points, you get the Western fries for free, fried chicken as well, the Kona blend in the coffee cup. Royal Farms, real fresh, real fast. Also, the Maryland Jockey Club, the entries for the Tessio on Saturday now in the WNST morning newspaper, as well as on the front of the site at WNST.net. We're a few weeks out on the Preakness. My wife and I are going down to the Kentucky Derby celebration at Laurel on May 5th. We'll be telling you more about that in 2 weeks, and Justify and Bob Baffert and all that good stuff as well. Reminder, Cole Roofing wants to let everybody out there with a corporate commercial roof know those March winds were real, the April rain was real, and that 95-degree heat's going to be real coming up in a couple of weeks. Get someone on your roof you can trust. Call our friends at Cole Roofing. Make sure you're getting that roof a look-see. You don't want to have a problem later on in the summer, especially leaks on a rainy night, stormy night. You don't want to have that. King Discount Liquors, lottery beer, booze, and the best prices in Baltimore. Get to Rosedale and give the King a ring. There's a rumor that I'm going to be appearing in a King Discount Liquors television spot. It's been a little while since, I think we only do every World Cup or Olympic year. I'm not sure what it is. If you get over to King Discount Liquors, tell Paul King we said thanks for sponsoring us and supporting us here at WNST.net. Also, the Baltimore Brigade play next Saturday, the 28th at home against the Albany Empire. They won last week against Washington. You can learn more at BaltimoreBrigade.com as well as at Monumental Sports. Luke is here. We're discussing the NFL schedule, and I guess you look at your own schedule, and I swear it took me 15 minutes before I realized they were playing the Chargers at Christmas. I was so into when Nashville. First off, I turned 50 on October 14th, right? So whatever that represented, as Coach Pillock, our partner on behalf of the Living Classrooms Foundation, would say, was where I was going to be putting my head for my 50th birthday. So it turns out I turned 50 in Nashville. So there you have it. And it will be a very expensive hotel room, Luke.
But not a bad place to spend your 50th birthday.
I like it. I love it. I want some more of it.
Right. I mean, I'll be honest. I've never been to Nashville, so hoping maybe it works out that I'm on that trip, since I'm guessing the Orioles aren't going to be playing in the postseason in
Fang fingers. Yeah, man. Maybe the Preds are in. Maybe there's some country music or something I won't like there. But there's rock and roll in Nashville too. So look, it could be worse. By the way, they're playing the franchise of my childhood, right? How about that?
Yeah,
they're playing the Allers on my 50th birthday. So, maybe for good measure I should invite Dan Pastorini to go with me or something. I don't know.
Yeah, and I'll throw a little football wrinkle into this. How about the Ravens trying to exact a little bit of revenge against the Titans? When you think about it, That game was the difference right there between the Titans being in the playoffs and the Ravens sitting at home.
Or the Bills, who can come here and thank us by rolling over in Week 1 for letting
Right, yeah. Buffalo coming into Baltimore, second time in 3 years.
And we're going to get even with Marvin in Cincinnati on the first Thursday night for knocking us out of the play. We can find hatred for everybody. I don't like the Broncos either in Week 3. How about that?
Right. Yeah, well, and it's definitely, I think with those couple home games early on, I mean, Buffalo, A.J. McCarron's their quarterback for now. I think they're definitely a team you're looking to I think they're going to be looking to draft a quarterback if things fall correctly for them. And Denver, Case Keenum was a great story last year, but I mean, who knows? I mean, the Broncos, it's pretty clear that team is pretty different from where they were a few years ago when Peyton Manning was being a game manager for them winning the Super Bowl. But it's definitely, there's some interesting storylines early on. And, well, Pittsburgh, Week 4, Heinz Field, we'll see if the Ravens can exercise the demons of the last couple years with heartbreaking losses. I suppose if that happens to them again, at least this time around, they'll have more time to recover. But I think Ravens fans are hoping that there's not a repeat of that in prime time once again.
All right, man. Well, we will be dissecting the schedule. I've printed it out. I've put it above, where I get my work done. I have my Orioles schedule right here on the camera already, so I always have that with me. So, I'm schedule oriented, Luke. There's a sort of liberation that happens when the Ravens schedule comes out that allows me to get the road trips going, and we are doing a bus trip to Charlotte on October 28th. We have the road trip for my 50th birthday for Nashville. We've secured all our flights for that, so we're pointing to Nashville and Charlotte for road trips. And, of course, Luke will probably be joining me in Cleveland and Pittsburgh and Cincinnati and all these crazy places early. Hit me out on the road trips if you want to find that. And, of course, you can find Luke at Baltimore Luke on Twitter. He will be enduring the Orioles all weekend long and all next week. I got the early bird schedule right here. It says Cleveland, Tampa, and Detroit. That's where we're going to be next week. Luke will be on that. If there's any breaking news, you get it first on the WNST Tech Service. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Dennis will be here on Thursday getting you ready for the draft, which is next week's fun. This week's fun's getting the schedule together. Next week's fun's the draft. Hopefully, fun after that would be the Capitals playing hockey throughout May and June, but that's another story altogether. WNST.net, AM 1570, WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.